Don't vote Democrat number 4. I am hopeful that people recognize that what Democrats say once they get elected is not translating into policy. And I do think that's a combination of malevolence by a few and the get-alongness, don't rock the boat, by the majority. So most elected officials have a fairly comfortable lifestyle and a very comfortable support group called fellow Democrats and even fellow staffers that don't want to rock the boat. So even when something's out of line, the thoughtful Democrat is usually afraid to bring things forth. Who suffers? Well, all the groups that I've mentioned. So it's been women, it's been African Americans, and now it is number 4, workers. Democrats, once upon a time, were the party for American workers. Okay? It is one reason why a lot of us signed on to be Democrats. But their policies don't match up. Democrat leaders are now not pro-worker. They are pro-owner. Their policies help big owners, big pharma, even if it might be poisoning some people. Big hospitals, even if the hospitals restrict our choices. Big insurance, even if they raise our rates and cause our deductibles to get even heftier. Big tech, even if they spy on Americans, even if they curtail the speech of Americans. They're in favor of it because the biggest owners have become the biggest donors. And so this big corporate plus government power complex leaves a lot of Democrats on the outs, Democrat voters who shouldn't be voting Democrat for a long while. Okay? They may get over this. Someday I'd like to see a resplendent Democrat Party, but that doesn't happen now, and I don't see it happening for most of this decade anyway. Look what Democrats do when they aid owners. Owners like to cut workers' salaries. Owners like to raise consumers' prices, more profit for the owners. Owners like to displace their workers. That might be with technology, that might be with foreign immigrants, or just plain overseas, they're not even immigrants. Owners like and work hard to end pension programs that were set up in the past. So look, all 4 of these things are natural tendencies of greedy, which isn't a horrible word, owners. Okay, but let the marketplace and the legal system settle those things out. Don't be a pusher, as the Democrats have been, in favor of ownership. At a minimum, stay out. But if you do have control and the acquiescence of the public to use funds, maybe it should be to helping workers, helping them get better skills and education so that when technology inevitably does come, they aren't permanently displaced, helping them to adapt well, helping with some immediate jobs that over the last few years have been abundantly fundable and needed in my state. Infrastructure for crumbling home foundations. That could have employed hundreds of work crews to get people's homes right or build homes anew. Infrastructure for some cities languished. We could have had a brand new building that would attract NHL hockey or maybe NBA basketball. Not in my state, not under this governor or this legislature. They were content to get surplus after surplus that they'll spend on their interest groups, and they don't seem to want to spend it on workers. Those who are in power elsewhere let workers languish without support surrounding the job. Look at Detroit, a cauldron of innovation and for a long time a place for hardworking people. So even if Ford, GM, Chrysler support these workers, the rest of the city government didn't, and people fled. Detroit has 1/3 of the number of people that it had in the early 1970s. There are times when Democrat-led bosses are pro-union. But they tend to be pro-union bosses. That's Democrats who not necessarily have the same interest as the workers. How often do you see your governor meeting with a line worker instead of a union boss? How often do you see your majority leader in the state legislature meeting with an office assistant? How often do you see the state's labor secretary, labor commissioner perhaps, meeting with a CNA? Okay, if I were elected to statewide office, I would not meet with a union head until after I've met with at least 10 underlying workers under his domain. What workers get from the Democrats are sinecures, jobs that they don't have to work very hard at, that in the long run, because their skills don't have to be really on top of things, leave them almost unemployable. Compare that to private workforce, where the incentives are right. A sinecure doesn't have to do much and still gets paid. Crews who only get paid for completed work, and completing work in shorter time actually pays them more per hour, they work really well, okay? Some of the very same men who staff roadside crews that don't work very hard, yet when those same men might do overtime or transfer to other private endeavors, they're working hard for those private companies. Democrats don't incentivize with our public money like they should. So to the small extent that they say, oh, I'm pro-worker, they're pro-short-term, sinecure, tethering workers to vote for them and keep doing the same old, instead of really empowering. And most disgusting of all is that the trend is even away from that and moving towards the big corporate ownership that does not have workers' long-term interests in mind. I'm Mark Stewart.